And so the closer carousel begins. Let's discuss on Fantasy Baseball today in 5. Welcome into FBT in 5. As always, make sure to follow and stream us on Spotify. Today is Friday, July 22nd. I am Frank Stanfield, joined by Chris Towers. The trade deadline is approaching, Chris, and let's try and do something which is impossible. Try and predict who's going to be traded. We'll start with the Cubs, who I think is most likely. They've got David Robertson, who could be moved, and if that happens, there's Rowan Wick, there's Michael Givens, there's Scott Efros, but some of those other names could be traded as well. What do you think?
Yeah, that's the thing, is that both Wick and Givens seem like decent trade candidates. Wick hasn't been particularly great this season, so I'm not sure how much interest there will be, but part of the problem there is I'm not sure how much interest I would have in him as a closer if David Robertson did get traded. But the Cubs certainly seem like a team who could move on. We've seen over the past couple of years they've been willing to sell guys off, even though they're kind of in the middle of they're trying to do like a quick rebuild. They're not doing a full teardown, but none of these guys are important to their long-term future. So I think any of them could get traded, which makes it hard to say that you should necessarily go out ahead of, try to get out ahead of it and add them, because I don't think there's a clear-cut option. I would guess Givens. Well, no, I guess Wick, if he's still there, would probably, just the way they've used them, he has 4 saves this season, so yeah. I think he would probably get the first crack, but Givens might be the better pitcher.
The Rockies could be a candidate to trade Daniel Bard, but they are the Rockies, so we can't bet on them to do the right thing. If they do trade Daniel Bard, Alex Colomé is a very clear replacement. But I guess there's a chance Colomé could go too. What do you think?
Yeah, and Colomé is another one who's not particularly exciting. I mean, he's the guy who's been a closer multiple times in his career, and every time he's a closer, it feels like the whole fantasy community is just like, it's not going to last. And did he lead the league? He might have led the league in saves at one point
I think
a few years ago, but even then nobody was super excited about him. So that's kind of who Alex Colomé is, especially at Coors.
The Marlins, I don't think that they will trade Tanner Scott. There's a chance, but he has kind of slowed down a bit recently, and Anthony Bass has been their best reliever all season. Do you see Bass potentially taking over in the second half?
I definitely could see it, and I think it's a move that the Marlins should make. Scott's just kind of erratic. He gets a lot of strikeouts, but he also walks a lot of guys. His walk rate, I think, is more than 1 every other inning so far this season. So, Bass, when the Marlins traded for him, remember, before the 2020 season, they did so with the expectation he would be their closer, and it blew up in their faces about a week into the season. But actually, since the first 2 weeks of the 2020 season or 2021 season, he's been quite good, and he's been their best reliever this season. He's a bit more prototypical in that he's a hard-throwing righty, whereas Tanner Scott is a lefty. So I don't think it's unlikely that Anthony Bass becomes the closer, even if Tanner Scott stays there.
For the Diamondbacks, does any team want Mark Melancon for this year and for $6 million next year? The answer is probably no, but stranger things have happened. Ian Kennedy is currently hurt, but does have experience in the role. I guess if he got healthy, he could kind of work his way in. Joe Mantiply, the all-star, he's a lefty, but he makes some sense as well.
Yeah, I mean, you do wonder what it would take for Melancon to lose his job, seeing as he hasn't yet, despite being pretty bad all season. But Mantiply, he's so unconventional as a soft-tossing lefty that, I'm not sure if the team would be willing to go with him. You don't see a lot of that archetype at closer, so it wouldn't be a surprise if they did move Melancon or took him out of the closer's role and Mantiply just either wasn't the guy or wasn't the everyday guy.
The last one I have here is the Angels, and they're pretty interesting because Raisel Iglesias is signed through this year and then 3 more years. So I don't know that they'll be able to move this contract, but obviously the Angels have fallen out of it. And I could see, a bigger market team coming in and maybe trying to acquire Raisel Iglesias. If that happens, Ryan Tepera does have some experience. What do you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't actually be surprised if the Angels decided to move Raisel Iglesias. I think there would be a market for him. He's a very valuable reliever, and I could see a team like the Dodgers, who have dealt with a very shaky Craig Kimbrell this season. I wouldn't be surprised if they made that move, but I'm not sure the Angels are really inclined to move Iglesias, so I would be surprised if that happened. And Tepera is, I wouldn't be particularly excited about him if he became the closer. He had a good 2021, but his career's been pretty mediocre overall, so not necessarily someone I'm super excited about.
Yeah, I think we can kind of say that about a lot of these relievers, but
Yeah, I mean, they're on bad teams. That's what happens.
Yeah.
Bad teams don't have a lot of good players.
in deeper leagues, we need saves down the stretch. So just a few names there to pay attention to as we get closer to the trade deadline. For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, your smart speakers, or anywhere else podcasts are found. And thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. We'll be back again on Monday morning. Bye-bye.